You bought a bookshelf 10 years ago, the one with the assembly manual thick as a paperback novel. You looked at the instructions once, maybe twice, then set them down on the floor and started grabbing pieces. Halfway through, you had one extra dowel and no idea where it went, but the shelf stood up, held books, and it's still standing today. That's a specific way your brain was wired to learn, and it has a name. I'm Frank, and the reason you'd rather try the thing than read about the thing goes deeper than personality. It's baked into how your memory works. Here's the part that flips the story. There's academic research using something called Kolb's Learning Style Inventory that found people in your age bracket, along with the generation right above you, tend to cluster into a specific learning profile. It's called accommodating. Fancy word, simple idea. It means you learn best by combining two things: actively experimenting and having a concrete experience. Translation: you touch it, you break it, you fix it, you know it. The younger generations coming up tend to cluster into more abstract, reflective patterns. Reading the manual first, watching the tutorial twice before touching the tool. That's not a value judgment, neither one is better, but it explains why watching your nephew read every review, every spec sheet, every comparison chart before he buys a coffee grinder makes you want to walk into traffic. He's being careful in the way his brain prefers to be careful. And when you buy the grinder, take it home, and figure out the settings by making 3 bad cups, you're doing the same thing on your own hardware. The part nobody hangs a lantern on is that this runs deeper than a preference. There are 2 separate memory systems in your head, and they run on different hardware. One is called declarative memory. It's the fact system. Capitals of countries, your sister's birthday, the year the Berlin Wall came down. It lives in a part of the brain called the hippocampus, and it can learn something in one shot. You hear it once, you can repeat it. You can put it into words. The other one is procedural memory. It's the skill system. Riding a bike, driving stick, wiring an outlet, cooking a steak by feel. It lives somewhere else entirely, in the basal ganglia, deep in the middle of your brain, along with parts of the frontal cortex. And here's the strange thing about procedural memory. It builds slowly, through doing. And once it's built, you can't fully put it into words. You can do the thing, but if someone asks you to explain the steps, you fumble. The knowledge is real, it's just not verbal. Neuroscientists have a phrase for this: actionable but non-verbalizable knowledge. Which is a mouthful, but it's exactly what happens when your buddy asks you how you knew the transmission was slipping, and you go, "I don't know, it just sounded off." You knew. You just couldn't say how you knew. That has nothing to do with intelligence. It's a whole different part of your brain doing exactly what it evolved to do. So stack those 2 ideas. Your generation tends toward a learning style built around action and experience. And your brain has an entire subsystem, an ancient, powerful one, that only builds real skill through doing. That's a match. You are running on the hardware you prefer to use. But why did that match get so tight for people your age specifically? That's where it gets interesting. Think about what was actually available to a kid growing up between the late 60s and the early 80s. If you wanted to know how to fix a chain on a 10-speed, there was no YouTube tutorial. There was no how-to article you could pull up on your phone. There was a bike, a chain that fell off, and the driveway. If you wanted to record a song off the radio, there was no playlist. There was a finger on the pause button and a lot of ruined tapes. If the VCR blinked 12, somebody in the house had to figure out how to program it, and that somebody was usually the kid who wasn't scared of pushing the wrong button. You grew up in this window where the machines were getting more complicated fast, but the manuals for those machines were still written by engineers, for engineers. Have you ever tried to read a VCR manual from 1985? It's like they translated it from German into Japanese and then into English while blindfolded. The instructions were not built for you. They were built to satisfy a legal department. So, you did what worked. You pushed buttons. You made it beep. You made it stop beeping. You learned. That whole era of your childhood was one long training program in trial and error. Not because anyone designed it that way, because the tools available didn't leave you another option. And by the time the internet showed up with actual plain English tutorials in the late 90s and early 2000s, you were already in your 20s and 30s. Your brain had already picked its lane. That's why you can watch a 22-year-old spend 40 minutes on setup videos for a new router while you'd already have the thing plugged in and beaming Wi-Fi across the house. It has nothing to do with being smarter about routers. His brain trusts the video. Yours trusts the plug. Now, this pattern doesn't stop at electronics. It shows up at work in a way that has real consequences. There's research cited by the Center for Talent Innovation showing that around 70% of people in your generational bracket prefer to work independently. And of the ones who specifically want to be their own boss, roughly 81% said the reason was control over their work. Not money, not title, control. Now think about what a modern corporate onboarding looks like. 2 weeks of slide decks, compliance videos, a binder, someone in HR explaining the values statement, role-playing exercises, shadow days, all theory, no touching. If you've sat through one of those in the last 10 years, you know exactly what your face was doing the whole time. It was the face of someone waiting to be allowed to actually do the job so you could learn the job. Before I keep going, I've been working on something on the side, a book called Psychology of Gen X. It gets into a lot of this, the stuff that got wired into you young and what it's doing to you now, the patterns you can't quite explain about yourself. Links in the description if you want to look. And to everyone watching and sharing this stuff, genuinely, thank you. If you want to go a step further, there's a Patreon too. Subscribers get early access to videos with no ads, and you help keep the channel running. That link's right there as well, QR codes on screen. All right, back to it. So this thing where you resent being managed too closely, call it what it is. Your brain saying, get out of my way, I need to touch it to learn it. A boss who explains a task in fine detail, then checks in every hour, then explains it again, then asks how it's going. That boss is not helping. That boss is stripping the wires out of your learning system, and you can feel it happening. You can feel the part of you that would already have figured this out just standing there with its arms crossed, waiting to be allowed to work. The pain of the modern workplace, for a lot of people your age, is that it's built around the other learning style. It's built for people who like slides, decks, guided walkthroughs, and a mentor who talks through every step. There's nothing wrong with that setup. It just doesn't fit you. And the mismatch is exhausting. There's another wrinkle here that doesn't get enough attention. Because your skill knowledge lives in a non-verbal part of the brain, you're often worse at describing what you know than you actually are at doing it. That's why the promotion sometimes goes to the person who can talk about the work instead of the person who can do the work. In a room full of talkers, the doer can sound like they don't know what they're talking about, when actually they know so deeply that the words haven't caught up to the hands. If you've ever bombed an interview for a job you know you could crush, this is part of what happened. They asked you to verbalize a procedural skill. Your brain does not store that skill in words. It stores it in movement, in feel, in pattern recognition. So you fumbled the answer and drove home furious. You weren't unqualified. You were being asked to read a book that was written in a language your brain doesn't speak. Here's where the story gets a little heavier, and there's a way back up. A Prudential retirement survey from a couple of years back found that around 35% of people in your age range have less than $10,000 saved for retirement, and roughly another 18% have nothing saved at all. Combine those, and you're looking at more than half of an entire generation staring down their 60s with a financial situation that would have been unthinkable to their parents. Now, a lot of that comes down to spending your working life figuring out systems that kept changing on you. Pensions vanished, 401ks appeared, then Roth accounts, then health savings accounts, then robo-advisors, then crypto, then whatever came out last Tuesday. Every 5 years the rules changed, and each time you were expected to teach yourself the new system while raising kids, paying a mortgage, and holding down a job that was also being reinvented every 18 months. And here's where the learn by doing wiring cuts both ways. In a garage, it's a superpower. In a retirement portfolio, doing it by feel is a rough way to learn. You can't take apart a mutual fund and see what makes it click. You can't test drive a Roth conversion. Some of the biggest financial decisions of your life live entirely in the abstract, declarative world. Spreadsheets, projections, tax code. And that's a world your brain would rather skip. That's a wiring mismatch showing up at the worst possible time. The good news is that it's fixable, and the fix isn't become a different person. The fix is to notice which decisions in your life reward doing versus reading, and to bring in a person or a tool for the reading side without pretending you're going to become a spreadsheet guy at 55. You're not. You never were. Stop feeling bad about it and outsource it. There's a Pew survey from a while back where people in your generation were asked what makes their group unique. Technology use and work ethic showed up near the top. Think about that combo. You didn't invent most of it, but you use it. You learned it as it came, machine by machine, one bruised knuckle at a time. From the rotary phone to the touch phone, from the card catalog to the search bar, from the paper map to GPS. You didn't grow up with any of it, and you didn't reject any of it. You just kept picking up the next tool and figuring out how it worked. That is a nearly unbelievable amount of adaptation packed into one lifetime. And a lot of people your age don't give themselves credit for it, because the way you learned it, by doing, didn't feel like learning. It felt like just getting through the day. But that is learning. That's the deepest kind. Your basal ganglia has been quietly building a library of skills for 40 years while you were busy calling yourself not a tech person. You're a tech person. You just don't sound like one when you talk about it, because the knowledge lives below the level of words. Same with parenting. Same with cooking. Same with the 80 different half jobs you did between your first paycheck and now. The bartending, the retail, the customer service, the odd freelance thing you did for 6 months, the side hustle nobody knew about. Every one of those built procedural memory. Every one of those made you faster, more adaptable, better at reading a situation without being told what the situation was. You collected skills like other people collect stamps, and half of them are so automatic now you don't even know you have them. Which brings up one last thing worth saying, because it explains a lot of the friction between you and the world right now. When you know something procedurally, and someone tries to teach it to you declaratively, with a slide, with a lecture, with a "let me walk you through it," you feel a specific kind of irritation that's hard to name. It's the feeling of being slowed down by someone who doesn't realize you already have the answer in your hands. It's the feeling of watching someone read the map to you while you're the one who's actually been to the place. That irritation has nothing to do with rudeness or arrogance. It's the sensation of two different memory systems trying to talk to each other and not being able to translate. The person explaining is using words. Your knowing doesn't live in words. And in that gap, both of you get frustrated, and neither of you is wrong. The move here is to notice it instead of fighting it. When you feel that heat rising in a meeting, in a training, in a conversation with someone who's trying to help, take it as a signal that your brain is asking to be allowed to do the thing instead of talk about the thing. Give it that when you can. Ask to try it. Ask to see it. Ask for the tool instead of the tutorial. You'll learn it in 10 minutes, and you'll remember it for 20 years. And when when you're stuck in the slide deck, when the manual is the manual and there's no shortcut, give yourself a little grace. That environment wasn't built for the way you learn. It doesn't mean you're slow. It means the room is set up for someone else's brain. Your brain is fine. It's more than fine. It built the shelf, raised the kid, ran the household, fixed the car, and adapted to 5 decades of change without a single tutorial being written for you along the way. There's one more piece worth landing before you go. There's a thing that happens around your age where you start to catch yourself teaching younger people at work, or your own kids, or a neighbor's kid, and you realize you're doing it wrong on purpose. They ask you how to do the thing, and instead of walking them through it, you hand them the tool and say, "Try it. I'll tell you when you're about to break it." And they look at you like you've lost your mind, because they were expecting a video. They were expecting a checklist, and you're standing there with your hands in your pockets watching them fumble. Because you know in a place deeper than words that the fumbling is the lesson. That's you passing on the wiring. The skill itself matters less than the way of getting the skill. Whether they take it or not is up to them. Some will. Most won't. Because the world around them keeps handing them tutorials, and tutorials feel safer than fumbling. But every once in a while, one of them will put the phone down, pick the thing up, break it once, fix it twice, and you'll see something click behind their eyes that no video was ever going to put there. That's the handoff. That's the thing your generation is quietly good at, even when nobody's asking you to be good at it. You know how to learn without a net. And in a world that's building more and more nets, that's worth something. The extra dowel is still in the drawer somewhere. The shelf is still standing. That's the whole point. Quick thing before I go. Psychology of Gen X came out of doing this channel and realizing all these topics connect into one bigger story about how you got built. So to everyone who was able to get it, or anyone thinking of getting it, thank you for supporting the channel. Genuinely. If you're looking to get it for yourself, scan the Q&R code on screen right now. All right, go watch the one on the screen. I think it's the right one for you.